I'm not the first to notice a lot of things reminiscent of Xenogears in Xenoblade 3, but I will be the first to make predictions with this in mind. Consider the rest of this video probable spoilers for Xenoblade 3, and spoilers for Xenogears, Xenosaga, and all of the Xenoblade games. Let's start with the major points that Xenoblade 3 and Xenogears have in common. Xenogears was codenamed Project Noah, and the protagonist of Xenoblade 3 is named Noah. Noah's design is very reminiscent of Fei, and a little of the Uzuki archetype. Xenoblade 3 has two warring empires, Keves and Agnus. Xenogears has two warring empires, Kislev and Aveh. Xenogears refers to terrestrial residents as lambs, and both Keves and Agnus mean lamb or sheep. Now we can get to the predictions. My first prediction is that Noah has an evil side. In the trailer, Lon says, "I refuse to believe you are him." This line is most likely set in a scene where Noah is accused of doing something terrible. In Xenogears, Fei was psychologically abused, leading to him developing dissociative identity disorder. And his second identity, Id, was an evil antagonist. Considering Xenoblade 3 has two protagonists, there's a good chance it is so Noah can be absent from the party and be an antagonist without the main character being out of the party all the time. The next prediction is that there will be a third side of cannibals masterminding everything. In Xenogears, there was a third empire floating in the sky called Solaris, controlled by the first man, Cain. They orchestrated a war between Kislev and Aveh, and then harvested the terrestrials for genetic experimentation and cannibalism, much like a certain vile group of scientists that tried to conquer Europe in the 1930s, that I don't think YouTube allows me to mention by name. They were led by a charismatic man who made many arguments appealing to emotion and credibility, and those in his nation blindly accepted his words, like sheep. Basically, Solaris were Sky Austrians, and Xenogears is kind of also a loose metaphor for the world conquest attempt. There's a chance Zanza or Amalthus might not be as dead as we think, or maybe another person on the space station got pulled into the Bionis Mechonis Pocket universe, and they're just now coming out. Or maybe Klaus sent a survivor down to repopulate. As far as the cannibalism, while in Xenogears it was very literal, my gut is telling me in Xenoblade 3 it will be metaphorical. I'm expecting the third side is in some way harvesting the lamb's life energy to extend their own, or to power their kingdom. The rituals of the Off-Seer are likely how this energy is transferred. The true villain might justify their actions as being a way to protect everyone from the Gnosis. But I have no doubt they are doing well at the expense of the commoners. My next prediction is Melia and Nia might be fakes. It's possible they are the real characters and will be explained, but it seems out of character for both of them to go along with a plan like this, even at coercion, and the masks strike me as odd. I would not be remotely surprised if they both turned out to be some sort of fake. I do think Melia, will have a Krelian role, even though Melia's brother, Kallian, was the literal Xenoblade version of Krelian. My next prediction is Vandham will fill the Citan role. In Xenogears, Citan Uzuki was a former member of Solaris, the third side, who descended to the surface of the Earth to open the eyes of humanity. Yes, a false Satan allegory to the false god of Solaris. Pretty straightforward. I think Vandham is a traitor to the third side. I also am going to predict he will have an underling named Hammer, a supporting character that has been in every adaptation of Perfect Works 5. Hopefully, he also has underlings named Tony and Matthews. There is one last thing to talk about though, and I already mentioned it, Perfect Works. This is another connection between Xenogears and Xenoblade 3, but there is no succinct way to talk about it. Tetsuya Takahashi, since making Xenogears, has had the outline of a 6-part epic in his head, and it might have even more parts now. The series might not be just a couple games from ending or jumping the shark. He could have 10 or 12 parts kicking around in his head for all we know. If they don't unify the numbered and X lines, even if it is still 6 parts, the numbered series might be Takahashi's draft versions, and X are the final versions. So even though Xenoblade 3 is Perfect Works 5, I am convinced we still have many good games to look forward to without dragging out something past its expiration because it sells. I'm getting ahead of myself again though. Episode 1 matches closely to the Klaus backstory and also Xenoblade X. So that's one of the reasons Xenoblade 3 equals Perfect Works 5. The first Xenoblade really perfectly meshes with Perfect Works 2, and to an extent Xenoblade 2 does as well, but doesn't quite set up for the future parts properly, and requires an alternate universe to retcon some things. Torna the Golden Country's introduction to blades and extending lifespans with Blade and Flesh Eaters matches loosely with Perfect Works 3's focus on using technology to reproduce outside of physically. Without blades, Torna and Xenoblade 2 would be super barren. With that, Torna, the airship gang, and Amalthus manipulating the chessboard while riding the flying Indal in Xenoblade 2 matches up decently to Perfect Works 4. So backstory and DLC are why we are 2 behind the Perfect Works we are now on. I think that's plenty of predicting and speculation for me. Do you have any theories about how Xenoblade 3 relates to Perfect Works 5?